In 1978, the leaders of Egypt and Israel met with President Jimmy Carter at the presidential retreat at Camp David, Maryland. The meeting gave birth to the Camp David Accords, a framework for peace in the Middle East. Here we'll look at the events leading up to the Accords, the importance of the agreement, and their impact on Israeli and Egyptian relations. In 1947, the United Nations voted to divide the British-controlled Palestinian territories into two countries, Israel and Palestine. Arab countries did not want the former Palestinian territory to become two states, and war immediately broke out between what would become Israel and a military coalition of Arab states, including neighboring countries Egypt and Jordan. When this instance of fighting finally ended in 1948, Israel was established as a country, but Palestine was not. This led to a series of conflicts known as the Arab-Israeli Wars, which would continue for the next 3 decades. Over 700,000 Palestinians became refugees in special territories in Arab states neighboring Israel. By 1967, Israel had expanded and occupied Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. This was a great economic and political loss for Egypt. The Sinai Peninsula bordered the eastern bank of the Suez Canal, one of the most heavily trafficked maritime trade routes in the world. Then, in 1970, in the midst of Egypt's economic struggle, Anwar al-Sadat became the president. Sadat ordered an attack on Israel on the Jewish Yom Kippur holiday in 1973 in an attempt to regain territory and convince Israel of Egypt's power. Israel claimed a military victory fending off the Egyptian attack, but the war also highlighted the need for a more stable peace between the two countries. In 1974, leaders from both countries signed the first Egyptian-Israeli disengagement agreement, which included returning part of the Sinai Peninsula to Egypt. Then, with the goal of creating a permanent peace with Israel, Sadat traveled to Israel's ally, the United States, in 1975. The peace efforts moved slowly. Sadat even visited Israel in 1977, but by 1978, a permanent agreement still had not been worked out. In 1978, a little over a year after taking office, President Jimmy Carter invited Sadat and Israel's Prime Minister Menachem Begin to his retreat at Camp David, Maryland. Serving as an intermediary, Carter worked with each leader separately to draft 2 dual accord documents in a secretive 12-day process. The document stipulated that Israel give the Sinai Peninsula back to Egypt. In exchange, Egypt would give Israel permission to use the Suez Canal for trade. Egypt also agreed to recognize Israel as a country. In 1979, Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin signed a permanent peace agreement based off the Camp David Accords. The significance of these agreements did not go unnoticed. Sadat and Begin received the 1978 Nobel Peace Prize. Egypt and Israel officially began a diplomatic relationship and reinstated trade between them. Leaders in the West praised Sadat, but many leaders of other Arab countries were not happy with the agreement. In 1979, the Arab League kicked out Egypt. Then, an Egyptian extremist assassinated Sadat. Yet, this act of violence did not deter the process Sadat had set in place. Egypt's next president, Hosni Mubarak, continued maintaining peace with Israel. Though the Middle East is still mired in conflict, the Camp David Accords serve as an example of the possibility for peace in the region.